All right, so let's discuss carbohydrates. So, of all four biomolecules, carbohydrates would be the most representative regarding providing quick fuel energy, let's say short-term energy, into our systems. Foods that are basically full of carbohydrates or that are mainly made up of carbohydrates include stuff like pasta, bread, some candies, sweets, a lot of desserts, and they can be in different fruits and vegetables as well, and they can be in different quantities or in different types of carbohydrates. Not all carbohydrates are the same. So even though fruits, vegetables, and candies may have carbohydrates themselves, it's not the same as getting carbohydrates from a candy versus a vegetable or a fruit. And that's pretty much the purpose of this video, to distinguish between different kinds of carbohydrates and also the function of them. So most of the information regarding the chemical part of carbohydrates, we'll see it later in chemistry. In biology, the main focus is to get into what really is the function and where are we actually getting carbohydrates from. So the function for carbohydrates, very straightforward, is they provide quick fuel and short-term energy storage for both animals and plants. And we're, depending on the type of carbohydrate, we'll distinguish certain different aspects that I'll explain in a minute. But the general aspect, or the general classification of carbohydrates, we can distinguish them between the simple carbohydrates and the complex carbohydrates. And the simple carbohydrates would be, in comparison, just for the sake of comparing, simple carbohydrates for our diets would be a little bit less favorable. Or let's say, I don't want to say bad, but they're not the ideal for our diets. What we actually want to pursue in our diets is to have a higher concentration or a higher quantity of complex carbohydrates. And the reason for this is basically from the source. Where are we actually getting these simple carbohydrates from? And these simple carbohydrates, as we've seen before, they're individual units of carbohydrates that we call monosaccharide, or two of them coming together. So what this implies is that they're very short in size, they're very small in size, and for that reason, as soon as we eat them or as soon as we get them into our system, they quickly pass into our blood, into our system, and they create these sugar spikes in our blood, which will later carry some effects in our body, as we will see later when we discuss about health. So overall, in general, when we say simple carbohydrates, we mean these individual units or very small units of 2 units that we call, if it's only one, is the monosaccharide, which, by the way, is exactly the same word for the monomer because of this reason, because it's only one, or disaccharide, which would be a unit of 2 monosaccharides together, right? So the examples of monosaccharides that we need to be familiar with are glucose, fructose, and galactose. You don't need to know exactly how many carbon atoms are in there, but you need to know the 3 examples that monosaccharides are. So glucose, fructose, and galactose, these are going to be within the category of monosaccharide. And depending on how they actually connect one with the other one, this is where we will have the second category of simple carbohydrates, which would be 2 of these units coming together into what we call the disaccharide. The 3 examples of this are sucrose. This sucrose is the sugar that you normally eat at table or in a restaurant or at home. Lactose. Lactose is the carbohydrate that is present in milk and milk-derived products like cheese or yogurt. And maltose, which is a carbohydrate that is present in certain drinks. So sucrose, maltose, and lactose are the 3 examples that we need to be familiar with. Disaccharide. Now, going now to the complex carbohydrates. In complex carbohydrates, we're talking mainly about fruits, vegetables, and anything that says like integral, like this rice or bread that has this label that says like whole grain or integral, which means that they're having like a more complex or more bigger structure of the carbohydrates. This bigger structure of carbohydrates is good for us because it actually takes some effort from our metabolism to start to break them down. So what that means to our health is that because they take longer to cut, digest, and get them into our system, it's less probable that our blood sugar will actually spike. So it would be taking longer for this carbohydrate to digest, and because of that, it will be longer the time that we can actually have our sense of being, not hungry, basically, and for extended periods of time. So most vegetables, most fruit include also the complex carbohydrates within its components. And here we have 3 examples. 2 of them are found in plants, meaning vegetables, fruits as well, and whole grain bread, whole grain rice, for example, which is the starch and the cellulose. Both of these, starch and cellulose, the first and the third one from this slide, they're basically coming from plant origin. And the difference is that cellulose is basically also known as fibers. So when we eat fiber for our digestion, we're actually eating cellulose, which is a thing that is found in the cell wall of the plants. And we'll learn more about these structures later in the semester. Starch and glycogen, both of these also have something in common. Both of them are to keep storage glucose, which is the other monosaccharide, they keep it in storage, but they're present in different organisms. Starch and glycogen will have the same function of storage of glucose. The difference is the starch will be present in plants, just like cellulose, but glycogen will be only exclusive for animals, mostly in the liver and in the muscle. That's where you store it. So starch and cellulose have something in common, which is plant-based, and starch and glycogen have also something in common, which is storage of glucose in the system. They differ in the organism where they would be stored. This diagram basically creates the same relationship or a diagram between them, or a relationship between them. Let me change this one. So where we have the 2 categories, simple carbohydrate and complex carbohydrate, and simple carbohydrates include 1 unit or 2 unit called monosaccharide and disaccharide, and the complex carbohydrates basically have this prefix that says polysaccharides, which basically means a lot of them, a lot of units coming together to make this very complex, very big molecule that is called starch, glycogen, and the one that says fibers in here in screen is the synonym of cellulose. So that's it for this video. We're going to continue with lipids on the next video to see more details about the structure, the types, and the function of it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.